Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sterling Live. My name is Caitlin Brower. I am Sterling's social media manager, and every week we come to you with new episodes of Sterling Live across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. These are thought leadership conversations with clients, partners, just the best of the best content that we can give you week after week. We actually had 2 episodes this week on very timely and important matters, so that's why we're back here today. I'm very happy to have Nathan Anderson on with us today. So Nathan is our Vice President of Product for Drug and Health Screening, and that is why we're here today to talk about something very important. We're talking about delays in drug testing, some recent delays that we're seeing. So Nathan, thank you so much for joining us. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Great. Happy to. Thanks, Caitlin. So as Caitlin said, I'm Nathan Anderson. I head up our drug and health screening product line here at Sterling. So myself and my team, we're really responsible for ensuring that we deliver a high quality service and reliable service for your drug testing and clinical services needs.
Great. And again, thank you for joining. Very, very happy to have you here. And, our audience, you're in for a great show, I promise. We have a lot to talk about. So again, as I said earlier, our topic today, we're going over the recent delays in drug testing. So I do want to remind our audience, if you are watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube right now, if you have questions for Nathan throughout the show, please go ahead in the comment section across all 3 of these platforms and put in your questions, and I will get them over to Nathan as I see fit. All right, let's get into it. So I want to start off with an overview question. I've got a couple of questions here for you. So what is currently happening with delays in the drug testing industry?
Great. It's been a rough year for the drug testing industry, to put it mildly. But it's not just the drug testing industry. I think we've seen a lot of impact across different industries. But specific to drug testing, clients and CRAs have been experiencing a lot of lab performance delays. So the labs in particular, these are where the specimens actually get shipped from the collection sites to actually perform the testing. We've seen significant delays in all aspects of the lab testing process, from the initial accessioning or kind of checking in of the samples to the lab, through the initial screening to certification when there's actually results. And these delays have varied in duration and how bad they've been, from mild delays of maybe 12 hours, 24 hours to 3 to 5 and plus day delays in certain scenarios. And so it's kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the year as well. But it has been pretty consistent that we have seen delays. And it hasn't been just one lab. It's been pretty much all the labs at different times have been impacted, but for many of the similar reasons. We've also seen some challenges, not with the lab performance, but also the collection sites and the clinics, where they're actually going in to have the samples collected or the services performed. And for there, it's been both delays, long lines. There's been staffing shortages at those collection sites, so they haven't been able to provide all the services. They've been requiring scheduling or people being turned away. And so there's been some inconsistencies with performance across the board there. And then lastly, we've also seen some challenges around ordering of certain supplies like paper chain of custody forms, as well as things like some of the sample cups and things like that have also been an issue.
So 3 significant areas where we're seeing some delays, some hiccups right now. So in particular, what is causing these delays?
Yeah, it's been kind of a perfect storm, but I would say looking at like the lab issues in particular, there's been kind of a systemic issue of labor shortage, which again is not unique to the drug testing industry, but is they've been felt acutely by them. So from a labor perspective, they've had a hard time finding the right staff to fill the positions, both the entry-level positions for doing the accessioning and things like that, but also the more skilled positions like certifying scientists have been particularly challenging for them to hire, and then also to retain because of all the resignations we've been seeing as well. So those have certainly tied into it. And then to throw kind of fuel on the fire, there's been a drastic increase in volume of testing as well. So you put all that together, and it's meant that the labs have had a hard time keeping up with the volume and being able to get through all the specimens that they have. And in addition to those kind of systemic issues, there's also been a number of kind of acute issues that have hit them throughout the year. Going back to like February, there was big ice storms that impacted FedEx, and it was weeks delayed in getting specimens, and that was caused a number of issues. And then more recently, we had, for example, Hurricane Ida that impacted some labs and caused some power outages and delays there. So that was definitely something that just exacerbated the underlying problems that they were already seeing.
Right.
And as far as the other areas that you mentioned, like the CCFs and the collection sites, I think the collection sites, it's similar in that it's staffing issues as well. They've had either labor shortages or just high turnover. And when you have high turnover at places like that, then the quality tends to go down because you have people making mistakes. They're newer, they have to be trained and so forth. And with the chain of custody forms, it's been just high demand, and also the recent federal changes that we had. So in August, for those that are federally regulated, they know that there was a new federal form that went out, which meant an influx of inquiries and requests for new paperwork that just caused that to back up and cause issues there as well.
So we're seeing delays in, a couple of different areas, and we're seeing these delays happen because of a couple of different, the actions that are happening, around. So with that being said, who is being impacted by all of this?
Essentially everyone that does drug testing as part of their screening or ongoing drug-free workplace programs or are federally regulated and required to do that testing. So we've seen it pretty much across the board. It's also because of the labor shortages and the staffing issues, more people are trying to hire, and that's why volumes are going up and trying to get people in the door. And these two things obviously conflict. If you have an increase in people trying to hire, the more drug screens that are being done, and then delays in getting that testing performed causes a lot of angst, obviously, for employers that are just trying to get candidates on board. So it's pretty much everyone that's doing drug testing as part of their program has been feeling this to an extent.
A lot of companies, a lot of people for sure. So this is obviously impacting Sterling. Drug and health screening is a part of an overall background screening program that, many organizations put into place. So it's something that it's impacting us. We're looking into it and everything like that. So I want to get into kind of, where we are right now, our recommendations as an organization. So as of right now, what is Sterling's response at this time?
Yeah, so it's something that we're obviously paying very close attention to daily, tracking of the current performance and where we're seeing issues. We work very closely with all our lab partners. So for those of our clients that are using Sterling for drug testing, we're monitoring very closely the situation with all of our lab partners to make sure that they're taking remediation actions to understand when they expect to see performance improvements, if there's anything else that we can do to kind of mitigate that on our side. So I'd say first and foremost, it's staying abreast and really pushing for updates and change and improvements with our partners. Since we don't control the lab testing directly in house, so we're dependent on them. But we want to make sure that we're working with them to get through these issues that they're struggling with today.
So with that being said, how are we? We're kind of taking some pivots with our clients to help out with these delays and everything to make sure, getting someone onboarded goes a little bit more swimmingly than maybe it is right now. So how are we helping clients get these candidates, to day one to start their jobs, even though there are the delays going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it doesn't just stop with, working with the vendors and trying to stay on top of it. We're trying to find proactive solutions and things that clients can do to get candidates in the door faster. In some cases, it's working with clients to reevaluate their programs and see if they can hire individuals on a conditional basis while they're pending the drug tests. That obviously doesn't always work in all industries in all cases. For others, we're also looking at introducing some different ways they're rolling out their programs. For example, progressive ordering. Maybe they're doing the initial criminal or public records checks up front or verifications. And then as a secondary stage, if everyone's clear there, then they move on to the drug testing so that they can screen out individuals faster before the drug testing kicks in. And then probably one of the most impactful things we've seen clients doing is if most of the delays are with the labs, then looking for ways to take the lab testing out of the picture. And the way to do that is with instant testing. And there's lots of different ways of rolling out instant testing these days, but the most common are using on-site at location tests that they're doing there, or using the instant testing available at collection sites or patient service centers, so that they can, again, get an immediate result. Then the only thing that's going to the lab is if there needs to be a confirmation or something's inconclusive, then it'll go off to the lab and need to be tested. But that's a small percentage of the overall testing. So that can reduce things quite a bit.
Well, it's great to hear that there are options. So while, we are still facing a lot of these delays and these little bumps in the road, there are ways, to pivot your organization, and Sterling can definitely help with that. So definitely great to hear that. So I want to give our audience, whether they're watching, whether they're clients, maybe they're just an individual going through a drug test at this time. I want to give, them some options of what to do, where to go in a certain situation like this, because this is a real-time issue. It's happening as we speak. So specifically to our clients, where can Sterling clients go if they have any questions or concerns?
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost, you continue to work with your client success partners. So we work very closely, again, with our internal teams to kind of spread the information and make sure everyone's up to date, the current status across all of our lab partners, and they know exactly where things are. And so if there's ever any questions about either specific tests or the overall industry and where things are, you should be able to lean on your partners in the client success organization to get that information. And then, of course, we're also engaging directly with clients when we need to explain these issues and help understand the different program options that they have. So going through your client success or account management or sales partner, if you did want to, for example, explore instant testing and understand those options, they can definitely have all the information to share those options with you. And then if needed, our drug and health screening team can step in and help support those deeper dive discussions as well.
So we do have a question on LinkedIn, and it does deal with some issues that labs are facing, not specifically delays. So, let me know if we do have to take this question offline, but can you comment on the issues we've seen with specimens not reaching the lab or potentially being labeled incorrectly? And the specification that it's not specific to Sterling, this issue, but a general issue people are seeing within drug testing.
Yeah, and there's lots of different reasons why that might happen. And I think if I generalize for that type of scenario, usually it boils down to human error. So most of the time, if a specimen is mislabeled, they put the wrong COC on it, they do something like that, then it could end up, being essentially show up as lost in transit or not being able to be reported correctly. And that often happens because as I mentioned at the top, in the collection sites, they have newer staff. They're overloaded with patients and work, and then when that happens, those two things combine, and you get more errors and mistakes. Unfortunately, something else that can certainly play into it is making sure that you're using, whenever possible, electronic registrations. So being able to electronically register, track everything electronically from beginning to end, so that you're not relying on someone forgetting to bring in a piece of paper and things like that can, if they're required to bring in a paper form or authorization form and they forget, then oftentimes the location will use their own paperwork, and that can lead to delays or things not being tracked correctly.
Another question on LinkedIn, and this I think is more on the lines of errors or things happening, but has your team heard of clinics or labs losing results? We have at least 2 to 3 candidates a week that take a test and results are lost. What can be causing this to happen?
That's a surprisingly high number. 2 to 3 a week certainly seems excessive, but I haven't heard of anything systemic that would be causing that. Now, most of the time is what we've seen recently is you'll see, for example, in the Sterling platform that a collection was completed. So they had the specimen, but then it seems that it's taking longer than expected for it to hit the lab. And that's mostly been due to lab performance issues. So if the lab's getting backed up and they're not able to accession all those specimens, in the typical, 12 to 24 hours that people are used to, then it starts to look like something was lost. But the reality is it often pops up 4 or 5 days later, unfortunately, not often, but in some of the extreme scenarios, and that then appears and goes through the lab testing process. Now, there are legitimate cases where it could be lost, it falls off a truck, or whatever happens, but that I haven't heard of any real systemic issues from a logistics standpoint or anything like that.
So I know you brought up in an electronic form earlier in one of your responses. So someone is asking, do most clinics accept that e-passport or that electric form on a mobile device instead of paper form right now? So
right. So the answer is it will vary, but anyone that is set up for an electronic form that you pre-register with, like in our system, for example, I can speak to, and I can't really speak to other platforms, but when you're registering and it's an electronic site, right then that it will accept it. And that means they can come in there and they can bring the electronic, mobile version and just show that, or as opposed to having to print it out. If it is a site that requires paper, because there may be out of network, you're in a more rural area where there aren't as many options and things like that, then it would indicate in our application that you're required to bring in a paper version of that as well. And it's those sites that might not accept a mobile copy of that.
Got it. Thank you. And thank you for, those who are submitting in questions right now on social media. We do appreciate that. And as always, Nathan, we appreciate your insight here. So we spoke to what our clients can do if they do have questions, they have concerns right now. What would be your recommendation or your advice for an individual that's watching right now and just got a drug test, or maybe is scheduled for one, and it has questions, concerns about these delays?
Definitely. And, I don't want to say, be patient, but certainly there's managing expectations on both the client and candidate side. It's understanding that these things are taking longer than they historically have been. But that being said, if you have concerns or questions about the status of it, you can always contact Sterling support and we can provide you a status update on that. And so, for example, if you call in and we're able to see that, it's in lab testing or something along those lines, then we can help provide that insight to you. So something to keep an eye out for is just, reach out to Sterling through the normal methods, through our support lines, and we're happy to help provide as much information as we can.
Absolutely. So it's been great so far. I do want to remind our audience, we did get a couple of questions, but if you're still watching live now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, if you do have any final questions for Nathan, please send them through. As we wait for any potential new questions to come in, what are your, just final thoughts to our audience? Anything you want to sign off with to let everyone know in regards to, these delays and everything like that?
Yeah, final thoughts are, it's like I said, it's been a long year, and we've seen this kind of been on this roller coaster, and it's ebbed and flowed throughout the year. So, some labs have experienced challenges, but then they've been able to recover performance, and then others will start to dip. And so, while I don't expect it to magically resolve next month or the month after, we are seeing signs of steady improvement across the labs of being able to figure out ways to mitigate some of these challenges and get back to business as usual. So it leaves me optimistic that while for the next, few weeks or months, we'll probably continue to see ebbs and flows and ups and downs, that as we move into the next year, these labs will start to stabilize, and I think we'll start to see the steady performance that we're kind of used to from them.
Absolutely. All right. Well, at this time, we don't have any further questions from our audience. I don't have any further questions for you. But this was a great, great episode. A lot of information within 17 minutes. I think you were able to address a lot of concerns that people are having right now, a lot of just general questions people have. It's great for us to deliver this timely awareness on this platform. So, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our live audience on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and those who are watching this on demand. We do appreciate your, tuning in every single week. But again, Nathan, thank you so much. This was a great episode.
Great. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, everyone.